Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the TakeCast. I am Davis Mattek, and I am blessed to be joined by Andrew Wiggins, Makisupa from Established to Run. Andrew, you've actually been on this show before, long time ago. I looked it up, episode 60 of this podcast. So that was like 5-6 years ago. You and Drew Dinkmeyer came on talking about how DFS was dead then. And look at us now, buddy. DFS was dead 5 years ago, and that was before you could go to thesolver.com and punch like 6 buttons and generate plus EV lineups. So we've come a long way with DFS still being dead.
Yeah, what's the saying about beating a dead horse?
That's I mean,
DFS.
That is really what I wanted to start talking about is you're probably the first person I ever remember saying that DFS is dead. Oh, the game's dead. I gotta give you credit. And I gotta say, I really think right now it's like such the opposite of dead. I think right now tournaments and like the underdog games and stuff, I think DFS is like as alive as it's ever been right now because there's such a huge gulf in player skill. Like because someone listening to this show can go to the solver and for what is it, $29.99 a month or whatever. Like, I'm not saying the solver is as good as like what Petty Theft or Nerdy Tenor is using behind the scenes, but I use the solver every NFL slate, and like I generate pretty good plus EV lineups for like a really low overhead. Like I don't think the game is dead.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. The key is game selection. If you're picking the right games, I think a lot of the big GPPs still probably have a decent edge. There's so much variance in those, especially the top heavy ones. Like FanDuel's particularly bad with the top heavy payouts. But yeah, if you're smart about the games you're playing, there's still money to be made. There's no question about it. If you want to play the high stakes, if you want to try and make a living at it, it's going to be very difficult.
Dead. Yeah. I would not advise anyone right now to be playing DFS professionally. Like, I don't think it's like, for example, in poker, which I know you have not played seriously in a long time. When's the last time you like went to a card room to go play poker?
Oh, well, my neighborhood will do a poker tournament a couple times a year, but that's $20 buy-in. The last time I played in a card room, I played the World Series randomly. Like, it was before COVID, so maybe like 2019. It was even earlier than that. It was still when I was still playing DFS professionally. So say like 2017, DraftKings had a big setup out there, maybe even earlier. I only lasted 3 hours in the main event.
They did the DraftKings 50-50. I remember that. I remember being like, that is such funny co-branding. Like, you go to the World Series of Poker to double up your entry fee. But yeah, in poker, I mean, obviously the player pool is so much larger. There are just so many more people playing the game. But like, I guess the equivalent of Sims would be solvers like Pio Solver and all that stuff. I mean, that's had a pretty dramatic impact on the game. I guess I don't really have a sense of like, if I was to go to my local casino and try and sit in the 2-5 game, how many of those guys would have ever ran Pio Solver? And they're like, maybe all of them. Maybe what at 1,000 no limit. Probably no one. Probably no one has run Pio Solver.
My understanding on the current state of poker is the live games are actually really good, and there's been kind of a boom with live poker. It's the online stuff that is almost unbeatable. So you have all the wizards with the solvers and everything. They're playing online. There's not a lot of casual people online. Now, if the legal status in the US changed, maybe that would be different. But as it stands now, you kind of got to jump through a lot of hoops to play online. So it's all the really serious people. But if you go to a card room the World Series of Poker just had the most entrants ever, right? For the main event. I believe that was the case. For whatever reason,
that is the case.
Yeah, live poker seems to be thriving, and I think it's still very beatable. It's just hard because you can't get as many hands in, and you got to go sit in a casino for how many hours if you want to do it for a living. So that's not great, but I do think the games are pretty good live.
Well, that actually, I mean, that is like a much larger conversation, but like all of Western society is so, and actually, I was about to say Western society, but it's the all society is so turned on to gambling right now, which I think is like a subliminal 9th level effect of global inflation. That is really what I think. I don't think it's because DraftKings and FanDuel and Underdog and Prize Picks are advertising on TV. I don't think it's because of any of that. I think it's because there is a deep sort of primal knowledge that you're not going to get rich. You're not going to be able to work hard enough. You're not going to be able to save. You're not going to be able to I mean, how many people are able to start a successful business and become millionaires, in this day and age? Although, again, you could argue, well, start a business, take out a huge loan, and if you fail, so what? Like the money itself is worthless. But I think it is a like a base level human understanding that our money is ruined, and so why not gamble?
I think that's part of it. I think there's nihilistic undertone for a lot of young people who feel like there's no way to get ahead. And I think that you see that in crypto with all the meme coins and everything, people just throwing money at stuff, hoping it'll, 10x, 100x, whatever, 1000x. And yeah, there probably is some of that in gambling too. I think also it's just people are looking for quick fixes. They have a short attention span and they just want those dopamine hits. And so Papa's in and fire up a 9-leg parlay on DraftKings and you're off to the races, baby.
No, that's actually, I mean, that's another one of my big, I don't know, what were the things, like just like the short attention span, the dopamine hits. And I mean, look, anyone who is watching this podcast on YouTube or listening to it, like you're probably doing 9 other things right now. You're probably drafting a playoff best ball team on your phone. You're probably like texting in your group chat with your friends. You're probably looking at projections for a slate. You're walking your dogs. You're doing like 9 things at once. You're kind of barely listening to this. You're just like you're tuning in for like the 3 or 4 things every other minute that are interesting to you. So I guess and those things are probably, I mean, I'm really bad at that. Like it is very hard for me to lock in. Like right now on my screen, I don't have anything else up. And that is like never happens. Like normally when when I'm on a show or whatever, even when I'm hosting a show, it's hard to just like lock in on one thing.
Are
It's like,
you
what do
old
you,
enough to remember watching TV without a computer or a phone in your hand?
I am. I'm 32, so I remember like kind of one of my core memories of being a kid was The Simpsons would run in syndication at 5 p.m. And I do remember like basically 3 times a week I would probably sit down. I didn't have a cell phone yet. We did have a home computer, but it was like I think we had dial-up internet. I remember like we had games that came on a disc, and so if you wanted to play the game, you had to like put the disc in. They were like
Yeah.
educational games. It wasn't like I was playing Call of Duty Zombies. But yeah, I do remember sitting down watching TV. You had to watch the commercials. Like commercials now, commercial comes on. You don't even think it's an autonomic response when a commercial comes on to pick up your phone if your phone wasn't up already.
Right. You already got it in your hand. Come on. Who are we kidding? Yeah, it's bad, man. Even when I watch HBO shows or whatever, I'll have Twitter up or I'm doing work or what. And so you're only half paying attention, which is why I think all this content that they're putting out is so crappy and mindless because people don't really care. I mean, you wouldn't want to go back and watch The Wire or Sopranos or something and not be paying attention. But now I think it's really hard for me to find TV shows that I think are interesting. But part of the reason is probably because I'm not paying any attention.
So it's so funny. I do these review shows of the new Star Wars stuff that is on Disney Plus with Brian Hooper, which is just like very funny. Noted DFS crusher Brian Hooper. And we're just talking about these shitty Star Wars shows.
Hooper.
And something that we have learned in like researching, like, oh, how do these shows get made? Why do shows get canceled? Why do shows do well? Why do they not do well? Is like at an executive level, they are actively wanting to produce shows that are there's a term for this. It's called second screen content. Basically, what they want is they want to generate shows that are interesting enough that you want to have it on, but they actively want there to be periods in the show where you do not have to pay attention. So they want it to be like 4 beats of like kind of whatever dialogue or some scenery or whatever for you to check your notifications. And then there'll be like a flash on the screen or a loud noise to direct your attention back so that your brain knows, okay, stop looking at Twitter and now pay attention to the show again. But like from an executive level, from a producer level, they know that they're trying to make a show for you to watch while your phone's on.
That doesn't surprise me at all, but it does depress me.
It is pretty depressing, which this is one of the things I really want to talk to you about. Like, you are one of the founders, investors, owners of Establish the Run, which I think you guys occupy a really unique space in fantasy because you do the YouTube, you've got, the social media content, the videos, the YouTube team does a great job, but ETR at its level, it's like a very serious business. Drew Dinkmeyer, very serious player. Mike Gallagher, I've never met anyone in my life more serious about working than Mike Gallagher. Leone is like in spreadsheets all day long. It's very serious work. The accuracy matters. And how do you go about thinking about growth for a business like that? Because I mean, you've been in this business for a long time. What do people want, man? They don't want a 9,000 word article. They want picks and they want to win. So, like, how do you guys think about that at a corporate level?
Yeah, I don't think it's really a growth business. And for me, the role that I play, I'm always, because these guys, I think it's more about sustainability. And you've got guys like Levitan and all the guys you just mentioned. They're just perfectionists and workaholics. And that's why the product is so good. But 6 years in, it's like, hey guys, like Levitan, maybe you don't need to be doing the waiver wire show, like we could have somebody else do that. But they want to have their fingerprints on everything. And that's why the product is so good. So it's a balance of like, how do we maintain work-life balance while still putting out as good of a product? And so I think that's the biggest battle that we have internally, not necessarily trying to grow. I mean, we are trying to add stuff and find different ways to make money, but ultimately like DFS, whether it's staying flat or more likely it's probably dying a little bit depending on the sport. In props, who knows where that'll be in a couple of years with the way that the sites handle it and the way that they shut accounts down, et cetera. And everything just gets more efficient. That's just the way it works. So to us, it's not about really trying to grow, but just trying to put out the good product and making sure that nobody loses their mind in the process.
Which is like, and no one ever cares. Like no one ever wants to listen to someone whose job is doing fantasy football podcasts complain about their job, and that's not what I'm doing. But it is such a funny thing in fantasy football. We're like, dude, it's week 12. When I get off the air with you, I got to write a waiver wire column because people have paid for it. They're expecting it. But I mean, I can see the data from my end. Like literally 25% of the people that opened the waiver wire column in week 1 are going to open it in week 12, which just makes sense, right? People, their fantasy teams suck. They lose. They're out. They're not as interested. They kind of know what they're already doing with their teams. Like they don't need my insight. Like oh, all right, I'm not going to add Tyler Johnson this week just because he played like 9 extra snaps or whatever.
Exactly.
I don't need to pay someone for that advice. And the work still has to be done. Like it's not like Leone can or Mark or whoever can fuck off the projections for a week just because people are less interested. And so there's kind of this element of like pushing the boulder uphill where you know it has to be done, but you also know that the amount of care and the amount of people in general. I mean, I'm sure you guys can see the traffic from your end. Like more people are probably logging on to ETR for NBA right now than for their waiver wire stuff.
Yeah. Oh, for the waiver wire for sure. I don't know in general. That's a good question. Probably. Yeah. Cause I mean, a lot of people come on for NBA props, but it's like, yeah, we're 12 weeks in. You've got the two sports going. I mean, there's other sports going in the background too, but obviously the two big ones. And a lot of the same guys are involved across both the sports. Like Drew's still doing Establish a Million, which is probably our most popular show. But he's barely keeping his head above water with NBA, so it's just like you start to pull your hair out. And it is, it's like you said, you don't want to complain about working in sports, but it does get a little crazy 12 weeks in. I feel like, it's like week 6 or 7 is where people start to lose it a little bit. They get a little testy. You start arguing about projections like, Derrick Henry's too high or, whatever. And you can kind of see it around then. And I think maybe once we get through Thanksgiving, everyone can kind of take a deep breath, but it's like, now you got the holidays coming up and it's just, it becomes a grind at this point. Whereas maybe in the beginning of the season, there's excitement. And as you get towards the end, it starts to wind down a little bit, but the middle is definitely a grind. And if you're playing seriously, which I haven't played professionally in like 4 or 5 years, but if you start hitting losing streaks at this point in the season, you can go a little crazy with that as well. So it's just, it's mentally taxing, I think, to be doing this 24/7.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't play professionally or even, I wouldn't even say like semi-professionally, but like the money matters to me. Like, it's not like my DFS role and my life role are like not that I'm, just like, not that DraftKings has like, not like my paycheck goes directly in there, but like the money matters to me. It's not like, I'm a working class guy. Like it's not like I have infinite amounts. And The other thing is like, I guess I made this decision a long time ago to just be very public about what is happening with my wins and losses. Like I do the Sunday night show where I go over my cash team. I am on YouTube talking about my best ball teams all the time. So like people know if I'm winning or losing. And when you like, if you've had like a rough, and Levitan experienced this too, where it's like, if people know you are in a bad rut, it's not like people on the internet, they're not trying to be kind to you. It's like, that's not their
Yeah.
role. Like, or, we're all just laughing. And I'm not even saying like, oh, if you trolled me about having a bad team or what, it's not your fault. Like we're all just experiencing this online together. But it doesn't make it easier. Like it's not great to be like, oh dude, I made this terrible cash swap and I have to go do this YouTube show that 5,000 people are going to watch, and they're all going to confirm what I already know, which is that I made a terrible decision. It's not that great.
Yeah, I did a review show for ETR for 2 years maybe, and maybe 3 years. The last year I did it, I was having a rough year, and I just hated going in the next morning and having to relive like, oh, this was the 2v2, and I think this is why I picked the wrong side of it. Yeah, that was not fun. So at some point I said, you know what, I'm not going to do this. It was like our least viewed piece of content anyway, so it was an easy one to drop. But I was like, yeah, man, I'm out on this. It's just not fun. Hey, with your team on Sunday, I know you played Anthony Richardson, which people were mocking for. I thought it was a sharp play, and I played Anthony Richardson on my main team. Maybe it was a little out there in cash, but
Well, Wiggins, people don't know this. I'm going to out you right now on the air. You're in the Cabal chat. You are in the secret Cabal chat that is frequently mentioned on the Swolecast and on other programs. And I came to Anthony Richardson on my own because it made such sense in the lineup where it was just, you saved the $200 so you could get Tillman. And I probably would not have played it if you didn't egg me on. I probably would not have done that. But at the end of the day, look, if I get the cosign from Wiggins, like, fuck it. I'm just gonna do it. Like, I just need, really, if I have a slightly out there idea in cash, I just need one person to tell me it's okay. Like, if you are giving me the go ahead, or if Nate Noling is like, yeah, whatever, like that projects fine, then I'm probably gonna do it. And we actually should talk a little bit about cash games, because that was my introduction to DFS. That was a huge part of your volume that you were playing early. Like, basically, is it just, I don't know. I think probably once you get above $100 on DraftKings, and I haven't played FanDuel Cash in a long time. I think you still do, but like DraftKings Cash above the $100 double up, you're just playing against pros effectively.
Yeah, which is not the case on FanDuel. It's crazy. I'm actually probably from an ROI standpoint, I think I'm having my best season ever on FanDuel in cash games. I'd have to pull it up and see what it is. I haven't downloaded all my FanDuel games and put them into the solver, but I bet my ROI in cash is north of 50% this year. It has been insane. And some of it is the games are season, and some of them I just felt like I know that I'm picking the right. You don't really have to have all these thin decisions on FanDuel like you do on DraftKings. At least most weeks you don't. And the teams have kind of made themselves for me this year. So that's been fun. But back to DraftKings, yeah, it's tough, man. Their pricing is so efficient, and the way
So
the player.
efficient.
I think the biggest difference between DraftKings and FanDuel is that you can make some big mistakes. Particularly, you will see people play receiver occasionally, even in high stakes, like $500 50-50s. They'll play a receiver or I've even seen tight end played in flex. And like, you can't do that. You have to play a running back. And just things like that, where there's enough spots where you can hang yourself and give up a few points in projection. Whereas DraftKings is so efficient with the pricing across the board and the way that you can play anybody anywhere, basically. There's like 50 or 100 lineups within a point of optimal. So it's really hard for people to make huge mistakes there, and it can be done. It just doesn't happen that much. And back to the Anthony Richardson thing, I just want to make a point on that. Like, you had a team that you thought was really good, and it was, but it was $200 off. And I said to you, like, hey, you could just play Anthony Richardson. And the thing I thought about Anthony Richardson this week was I didn't think his projection was right. I understood why he was projected the way he was because of how he's played throughout the course of the season. But we do have another sample, like a bigger sample from him being way better, from last year. And here you're coming into a situation where, like, throughout the course of the season, you weren't entirely sure how much he was going to be running. But now he hasn't played in a handful of weeks. He's healthy. It's a situation where the way to beat the Jets was on the ground and then throwing deep shots, which is exactly what he does well. And it just seemed like, hey, he hasn't played. Like he got benched for Joe Flacco. He's going to come back and he's going to be running. Like that's how he's going to win in the NFL. So I understood why the projection was the way it was because you had, whatever, 7 or 8 weeks of data that you had to use. But I just didn't think it was right. I thought it was a few points light. And certainly, I'm only playing tournaments on DraftKings, so it was a really easy play in tournaments because I knew he wasn't going to get played and we know what his ceiling is. But I don't think it was a bad play in cash. I think it was probably like slightly suboptimal. But there were people in our Discord like, we're going after Mattek, because you'll come up in our Discord. I'm like, you shouldn't take his lineup. I think it's a good lineup. And then I think you ended up swapping, right? So you lost, but you would have won. Had
Oh,
you not
I made the old negative 35 point swap. I had Jennings and McCaffrey like everyone else, and so I didn't play Booty. I played Davis Allen instead of as my punt, and which like I don't know, whatever. I gave up a point maybe, but like I thought Kayshon Boutte was basically a collective hallucination from the daily fantasy sports community. I thought he was basically the worst play of all time. Like nothing changed in his role. In fact, his role actively got worse because Kendrick Bourne did not play the week before and was going to be activated. Bourne is a wide receiver who's earned targets when he's been on the field like his entire career. So I was like, I'm just not playing that guy. Davis Allen sucks. Tillman sucks. Jacoby Myers sucks. They all sucked. Everyone other than Richardson. Kamara didn't score. A-Chain didn't get the bonus. Like they were all like, I think everyone in my lineup had the snowflake other than Richardson. And basically, I do this sometimes where I think I'm further behind than I am. I just didn't. Yeah, I did not compute where I was at. So I swapped to DeAndre Hopkins and Bijan Robinson. Bijan had 9 points on the first two drives. So I was like, oh shit, I'm going to cook because McCaffrey looked terrible in that game. So I thought it was going to be okay. It ended up not being okay because Jauan Jennings is the greatest player in the history of football. Nothing you can do about that.
I had a really good team. I was in first place and sorry if I'm lagging a little bit. Yeah, I didn't play Jennings on my main team, and I was in a 10K qualifier. There's 22 people. I ended up taking third because Jennings chased me down late. I'm still not quite sure. That's another one where, like, clearly in hindsight, the projection wasn't quite right. It's like, but I mean, how do you project him as a more alpha version of Brandon Ayuk? I mean, it seems like that's what he is. I had the money to play Jacoby Myers, and I thought, okay, we have him projected for a point more across the industry. It's maybe a little bit closer, but even if you call it a flip, like I know he's going to be half the ownership of Jennings. I obviously like Jennings better as a play. Like the cash mind to me is like play Jennings, but do you really want to play a receiver into 50% ownership, which is what he was going to be in the game I was playing? So I ended up playing Jacoby. And then, when you end up losing by 5 points and Jennings beat Jacoby by like 18 or something, it's really, really, really frustrating. So I still don't know if I made the right play there or not. Like, because I did like Jennings. It was entirely just an ownership thing. And clearly we're not projecting him right because he's just, I mean, all he's done is absolutely smashed when he's had the opportunity. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on Jennings as a whole?
So I think Jennings would have been a guy like 8 years ago in fantasy football. We maybe could have seen it coming to some degree because guys just used to take longer to get there. You used to have to bide your time, pay your dues, whatever. You play with George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. Like, would really not be that weird for a guy to not be good until his third or fourth year. Not, and Jennings is in his fourth year and like was never a targets per route run, was never a guy that the advanced data was like, oh, this guy's great. He was a 5-star quarterback recruit when he went to Tennessee. But then he was really good in the Super Bowl. He's always, I know the film guys say a disproportionate amount of his targets come on third down. Like this is like Ben Solak from ESPN tweets this all the time, 3rd and 1, where it's like he's just always getting these like very high leverage targets. So there's probably something there. But the other thing, the unspoken thing, is that something's wrong with Deebo. I don't know if it's that he had pneumonia. I don't know if he's still being bothered by this calf strain. I don't know what, maybe he's just old. I believe this is his age 28 season. Maybe, I don't know. But something is wrong with Deebo, where Deebo right now, and this is not just an ETR thing, this is an everyone thing, his projections are just flat wrong. I believe, I can't remember if Levitan tweeted this or if Scott Barrett tweeted it, but 20% of his targets have come at the end of halves or end of games against prevent defenses. Like literally like 20-25% of his fantasy points have come in situations where teams are just allowing him to run free and get reception. So something is wrong with the Debo projection. And then if you take it to the second level of like, well, the team total's right. You know, we respect the Vegas thing. We're not saying Vegas is wrong. Team total's right. 49ers Super Bowl odds are right. Like they're not saying this team is ass. Then you got to be like, well, yeah, it's and Kittle wasn't in that game, so like it's got to be
Right.
Jennings basically.
No, I think you nailed it. I think that, and I was talking to Levitan about this, on Sunday night. I think it's like, with these hyper efficient guys, you probably got to be kind of quick to pull the plug on them, like on the backside. Like if it's not there, you can't just keep projecting them as hyper efficient. Like we haven't seen it from Debo. He had that one, he had like a 70-yard touchdown.
179-yard touchdown against the Seahawks, weirdly.
Yeah. And then he had another long one, I believe, that was called back. But man, we haven't really seen it. And I don't think McCaffrey looks right either. So, okay. So now you're projecting McCaffrey basically at where he was at. You're projecting Debo at where he was at. I think that's where the hole is in the projection, because everyone else on the team fell short of their projection. And Jennings like didn't smash his projection. He beat it like basically because he scored a touchdown. But yeah, I think that's it. You just, when these guys don't look right, you can't just assume that they're all, like somebody's got to pick up the slack if they're going to hit their team total. So yeah, I definitely feel like I made a mistake there. Like sometimes even into high ownership in the smaller field stuff, like it's okay to eat the chalk on it. And yeah, I wish I'd done that. But live and learn.
Well, I mean, this is another large point, which is that actually as DFS continues and evolves and people have access to better projections, better data, even better content, like the free content out there that you can get is really good. People are going to steer you in the right direction. One of the skills is actually going to come all the way back around to how you could have won at DFS in 2013, which is knowing ball, knowing what
Yep.
teams are likely to do, knowing, oh, this guy doesn't look right. This guy is, oh, he was really close to scoring a touchdown last game, but Nico Collins this upcoming week will be a good example. I don't even know if the Texans are on the main slate, but it's irrelevant. But like the 77-yard touchdown that he scored is not going to be reflected in any data because it got called back by penalty. You're going to look at the data. You're going to be like, oh, he got the same amount of targets as Tank Dell. He had 4 for 54. CJ Stroud is 23rd in EPA per play, like all this stuff. So knowing where some of the inputs, I'm not even saying they're wrong. Not even saying that Leone and all these guys' inputs are wrong. Just saying where they could be volatile, where the assumption that you have to make when you're trying to instill everything into one point, just knowing, well, how could this be wrong and how could that benefit my lineup, basically? And I think Jennings is a really good example of that.
Yeah, and you have to approach projecting players in a consistent manner. You can't just go in and be like, oh, I feel like that guy should be higher, so let's fudge it. Or, like you end up, I'm trying to think, there's an example we were talking about. Oh, the Jets. It's like, clearly something seems off there. And I think after another game of them sucking, it's like, I think Vegas will probably adjust this week. I haven't looked at their total, but it's like Vegas keeps projecting them to score a lot of points and be a decent football team. And all they do is suck every single week. So we're talking to the projection team, like Levitan and I are like, look, we think the Jets suck. But they're saying, well, like, here's the Vegas numbers. Like, we've adjusted basically everything we can down as much as possible. We're now at the point where we're like legitimately either fudging the team total or like just getting into territory where it's not something we would normally do unless we had a really strong indication that we should be doing that. And so it's a really fine balance. And like, you can push things all the way to a limit, but there's a line that you cross at some point. And we weren't comfortable crossing that with the Jets. And like, clearly we should have, because they just freaking stink. But yeah, if you're just finding certain spots and picking them out and making big adjustments, that's probably not a winning way to project people. Like, ultimately you want to be leaning into the data. But the key is, like, sometimes you understand why a guy is projected like he is, and maybe there's more downside risk there. And that's where you can make adjustments. And like, maybe you don't play the Jets D. I don't know if the Jets D ended up being chalky, but they were looking to be chalky.
Everyone played the Titans D.
Yeah. So, but I think that's because people recognize that the Jets, there's just something off there. And so that would have been a good spot if they were chalky to not play him. Like, I haven't been playing any of the Jets receivers in weeks. Breece Hall did get there. But yeah, like, they just have not been an explosive offense, and that hasn't been reflected in the projections.
Yeah, there are lots of examples like that. Like the Vegas line or whatever didn't really move that much when Geno Smith's center just retired 48 hours before the game. It's
Yeah,
like, well, that's
that's
not a
not
spot.
good.
That's not a spot I'm attacking personally. Like, you can, and obviously, for every anecdote you can come up with being like, oh, look how much I know ball. I played Anthony Richardson in cash. You could be like, okay, well, yeah, but what if you would have played? You were like, oh, this is the best ever Sam Darnold spot because he does so well against man defense. Like, obviously, there is an equal and opposite reaction, but
Yep.
again, like in tournaments, the equal and opposite reaction, that doesn't matter because you really like in a season, like if you get one shipper, that's all you need. Like if you win the spy once for me, that is all I need. Like that
Right.
is totally fine. So identifying those spots where the field is missing something. And you're right. Like people always do this with projections, Andrew. They always do this. They're like, look how shitty these projections are. They keep giving me Brees Hall and Brees Hall sucks ass, but they don't realize that like literally you're projecting every offensive skill position player. Like as you're not giving the projection team credit for knowing 4 weeks in a row they got Alec Pierce's target share exactly correct or whatever. Like you're only focusing on the spots that like annoy you personally. Like even Kayshawn Boutte last week, I think he's this awful play. He's terrible. I believe he like literally was within zero point 0.5 points of his median projection. I thought his median projection was not useful for me personally, but it's not like I would say the projection itself was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And he got there late. I feel like didn't he have 0 at halftime? I think so.
He
Or
did
maybe
he did have 0 at halftime, although I was doing my write up yesterday. He did literally play every offensive snap. He did not sub off. I mean, look, he's like he's DJ Shark, he's Marquez Valdez-Scaling, like he just is a total sacrificial guy. But I was thinking while you were talking about that, that's actually something you see in NBA much more, where and Leone or one of the data guys would do better at this than I would, but like there's something in the way NBA median projections are presented for a guy like Chris Paul, Mike Conley. These guys were like, their bands are so tight and the inputs are right, but you are going to get in a solver or whatever, you are going to get these sort of uh, there's been better ETR and Daily Roto guys over the years than examples of this, but I just know from doing projections is Miles Turner is a big one where you're just getting Miles Turner all the fucking time.
Yep.
It's like, yeah,
Yep.
he's a Bam out of there's the one. Bam out of bio. I just call Bam out of bio 39.8 points. That is what Bam out of bio is. He did have a crazy stock game the other night, but like there is something in the projections where because their bands are so tight, they look awesome from the medians, but they're just not the type of guy to like explode effectively. NBA projections are
Yep.
just very hard.
Yep. I usually use, and again, I'm playing tournaments on DraftKings, but I'm mostly looking at ceiling projections. And I know even for cash stuff, like usually I look at just the median projection, but Leone would tell you should look at the blend of the median and the ceiling, which I think makes sense. And that's something that Levitan gets at a lot when he's doing his write up. Like, sometimes there are guys that project the same, but like if you're playing a lot of head to heads, like you want to swing a little bit more for the fences. So I do think the ceiling projections are very useful.
Have you been playing any NBA DFS this year, or is that like truly like the game is gone? What happened to the game I love?
Yeah, it's just once I had kids, it became very difficult because the games. I'm on Mountain Time, so the games start at 5 p.m., which we eat dinner at like 5:30 with the kids, and then it's bedtime, and then you're cleaning up all their shit. And by the time all that's done, it was even worse when they were younger. My kids are 4 and 5 now, so bedtime goes a little bit quicker. But when they were like 2 or 3, sometimes bedtime could take 2 hours, and then you clean up the house, and it's like 9 o'clock, and then I just go to bed. So there's literally no time to watch any NBA. And to make matters even worse, they don't broadcast the Nuggets games on local TV here because there's not an agreement between
Are
the
you
team.
serious? You
Yeah, it's
can't
been like
watch the
no
Nuggets in Denver?
for for like 4 years, man, for this whole run basically. It's absolutely pathetic. So yeah, they just can't come to agreement with Comcast or YouTube. So you can watch it obviously when they're on ESPN or TNT, but it's hard for me to get into the Nuggets like outside of the playoffs when I can't watch most of their games.
That is so short-sighted. Like the Nuggets
It's
should
insane.
be They should be like the Nuggets are probably way less popular than the Broncos, I would guess then. Like people
Yeah,
are like way
definitely.
more into the Broncos.
Yeah.
I mean,
But I mean, that's probably the case anywhere for football versus basketball.
I don't. That would be a good question. Is there any American city where people are more hip to the basketball team than the football? Maybe San Francisco. Maybe people care more about the Warriors than they do. You know, San Francisco pretty woke,
Mm,
pretty lib. Are people more woke? And the
maybe,
Warriors have been great forever.
maybe,
Like
maybe. But I feel like the 49ers are still super popular. I don't know. That's
that's
probably
you.
the closest you could come. But I still don't think it would. I still don't think
N-
so.
Knicks, Jets, Knicks, Giants.
Yeah. I still
That's
don't think so. I don't know. If football is king, man.
football is king. Yeah. I'm just trying to I mean, obviously there are some cities where there's no football team and those teams generally do. Like the Thunder are like ubiquitous in Oklahoma
Yeah.
City. You can't
Yeah.
go anywhere. Like which like I mean that's my team. So like I love that and going to Thunder games is awesome. But, you know, that's a the Sooners are still bigger though. Like the Oklahoma Sooners are still
Oh yeah.
bigger than the
Yeah.
Thunder for sure. I mean that's like a more larger cultural conversation. I don't know, like why is basketball not as popular as the NFL? Like I guess people are really not into the rest. They hate I don't know what it is. People just really bristle against the idea that these guys should just play every night.
Well, I just think there are too many games, and there shouldn't be back to backs. There should be about half as many games, and then I think it would be more popular. But I understand why that's not the case. Like you'd be punting so much revenue. But yeah, I mean, it's just like when every game doesn't really matter all that much. It's hard to get into it. So football, it's like every game really does
Every
matter.
game matters.
And they're all at the same time, so it's just more of a collective thing. It's like in our system. I was thinking about this during the Tyson fight the other night, which, by the way, just really bummed me out so much about it. But I hadn't there hasn't been a collective sporting event like that in a really long time. Obviously, you get to Super Bowl, but a big fight. Like I can't remember the last time everyone I knew was watching a fight. I mean, you got to go back like 15 years, maybe to Mayweather Pacquiao, or like I feel like there used to be like big boxing matches all the time. But everyone I knew was watching. I had all these different chats going, and yeah, God, for it just to, like the broadcast was so crappy. The commentators were so
It
bad.
was terrible.
The buffering, everyone was having trouble with the buffering. The fight obviously completely sucked. Everything about it just made me sad. It's like, this is what we're having our collective event over. Like this fighter who's 58 years old. And I love Tyson. Obviously everyone loves Tyson, but like, I don't know, that fight should have never happened. And I think as a society, we are missing those collective events. So with football, you do get it to some extent where it's every Sunday and then you get the Super Bowl, but that's it, man. Like what else do we all watch together? Nothing.
Nothing on TV. The last relatively collective, like monocultural experience was Game of Thrones finale, which I didn't even
Yeah.
watch. I was not like that was like the big one. I think Mayweather McGregor. I mean, maybe that was just more like my part of the internet because everyone. I'll never forget this great tweet, and I forget who did it, but they said the high stakes poker community is about to become the mid stakes poker community if Mayweather
Yeah.
doesn't win this fight, which is incredibly accurate, and I assume I don't know, probably kind of true. Although everyone in poker now is so fucking rich because crypto is up so big. But yeah, I mean, we are big time missing cultural collective experiences. I guess elections, everyone is following the elections at the same time, but that's not a collective experience. That's a headbutting experience. You know, people
Yeah.
have so gone, you know, I mean, not to get too political, but like it's a sign of a deeply unhealthy society when it's just two populist parties throwing punches past each other and like no one cares about policy. Did one person in this election like oh, I'm voting for either candidate because of this policy that I really like? Like there's none of that. It's all celebrity, which is as a big nerd, as someone who like did debate and stuff in high school and college, like that is very depressing to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, neither of them really had any policies, but I think even to back to the point at hand that I feel like a lot of people even tuned out this election. Like my wife didn't watch any. This is the first time I can remember we weren't watching election coverage together. I was
Yeah.
watching my boy Brian Micon do his Market Mania show, which Now it's two elections in a row where I've watched that and it just cracks me up. He's an old school gambler, like way back from, early 2000s. And he got into Bitcoin. Do you know about Micon?
Yeah, I know about Market Mania, Brett Ritchie, Matt Clance. Yeah, I know. I don't know a ton
Yeah.
about him in
So
particular though.
Micon was big into crypto like really early on, and he opened up a poker site where you could only bet with Bitcoin. And this was when Bitcoin was like $400. It was called
Yeah,
Clubs with Seals. And that was actually my first exposure to Bitcoin, was buying Bitcoin to play on Clubs with
to
Seals.
play on. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one funny thing is looking back now at like the amount of Bitcoin that was being played on that site is like absurd amounts of money now, because it was $400 versus 90,000. And then the other crazy part of the story was eventually the feds literally kicked down his door and raided his house with, M16s or whatever freaking guns the feds use. So they came storming into his house, pointing guns at him, took him off to jail. He's just a crazy dude, man. And he's been around. He got through all that legal issue, and he lives down in like Barbados or somewhere, one of the
Well,
islands
that's
now.
if you
But
got a lot of Bitcoin, you got to get to an island nation.
yeah,
Yeah, my the first time I ever bought Bitcoin would have been in 2012 or 2013 from Kyle. I bought
no
it.
shit.
This was before exchanges. This was before any of that. I bought Bitcoin from Kyle. I PayPal'd him, and then he sent it to my Nitrogen sportsbook address. That was the first. I mean, I don't believe Coinbase even it existed then. So that would have been the first time that I ever bought Bitcoin. Really, really. I mean, obviously I love Bitcoin, right? No, this is not. I'm not breaking news with anyone here. One thing I do think is inarguably terrible about the existence of Bitcoin and the fact that like there's nothing anyone can do. It is going to win. It just is what it is that some of the worst, dumbest people on fucking earth fell ass backwards into generational wealth. I do. That is like if some person was like Bitcoin's stupid and we should outlaw it, whatever. I'd be like, well, you are wrong, but in this point, you are 100% correct.
I think the funny thing about really like how lucky gamblers have been, if you go back to the original poker players, it's like, okay, you had poker, which was really easy money for a long time. And then you had DFS, and most of the poker players were in DFS very early. And DFS was extremely easy early on, just
Extremely easy. Yeah,
incomparable to what it
even
is
I
right
used
now.
to win.
I mean, when I first started playing NBA, I didn't really follow the NBA much. I just watched the Bulls. And I certainly didn't know anything about models or whatever. My friend, who's a little bit better with Excel than me, he built a solver in Excel. And all that means is it would just take all the median
All the
projections and tell
points.
you, yeah, like how they combine for the most points. And I would just download Basketball Monsters daily projections and then just run it through the solver. And I was murdering. I didn't know anything else. And it's like players are putting out people who weren't even in the lineup that night regularly. So it's like, as long as you had everyone that was playing, and if you just looked at Basketball Monsters projections, like obviously I got more sophisticated from there, but that's all I was doing initially. And I was just smashing because nobody was doing anything. But yeah, back to what I was saying about poker players. And then you had crypto come in, which most of them got exposed to crypto because they were trying to bet on offshore sites for sports betting or poker. And then like most poker players have this libertarian bend to them. So it's just like,
Yep.
how lucky can you be that it just, everything lines up. And then obviously crypto goes insane. Yeah, it's pretty silly stuff for sure. And thing I've learned about crypto Twitter in particular, which I think most of the gamblers in crypto are a lot sharper than crypto Twitter.
Crypto Twitter is all idiots.
I think it's like 99.9% stone cold morons. All the guys that have followings on crypto Twitter. There's like Kobe, who's sharp.
I like him.
And is there anyone else? Timex, I guess, but he's a gambler and he's not really crypto Twitter.
Timex, I have DM'd him no less than like 9 times trying to get him on this program. I mean, he's probably like my Mount Rushmore of guests on the show would be like Rory McIlroy, Timex, Travis Kelce, and like I don't even know who else. But like I want him.
Yeah.
I just want to pick his brain. So I think he is a fascinating guy. I like D's. who, I mean, he doesn't pretend to be sharp. He just is very
Yeah.
funny. The crypto Twitter accounts that are good are the people who acknowledge it's all insane and that it's
Yes.
simply just gambling and trying to hop off. Like, I'll tell you, my least favorite people on crypto Twitter are the people who think Ethereum is a serious project and like and like, look, everyone goes through their period of being Ethereum curious. I was deep in the ETH streets during COVID because like that was where the casino was. The casino was on ETH then, and the casino was fun, and there was money to be made. And I was like lightly intrigued by the idea of ETH becoming deflationary. Uh, but at the end of the day, I mean, there is no second best. You know, there really is no second. And I mean, Solana is obviously terrible and like vaporware and like not revolutionary technology. But the key thing about Solana is no one involved in it pretends that it is. No one pretends that Solana is a Bitcoin competitor, which I think is good marketing and good branding.
I do think that Ethereum, I mean, I'm scared to even say it, but I think it's a pretty decent buy here. Usually when everyone has completely written it off, that's when it's, I mean, it's down, like Bitcoin's more than doubled against it over the last 6 to 12 months, right? You know, BTC.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't feel good about it, but it's probably an okay buy here. But yeah.
Well, I mean, don't ask me to do fucking technical analysis because I'm not going to. But my read would be the retail onboarding is getting split between Ethereum and Sol
Well, I think it's not even getting split. I think it's mostly going to Sol.
Yeah.
But I do think if like big players and institutions get more involved, it's probably going to be on the east side. And like Larry Fink likes it, and you want Larry Fink on your side. So I don't know. I don't love it, but I wouldn't necessarily count it as dead for now. But the thing about BTC, which I'll give you credit, you're always a maxi, and I think it's looking pretty good now. There's all this game theory stuff that we thought could possibly kick in, but it's now kicking in, where like corporations and third world countries should be buying it. And really the United States government with where we're headed right now, you know, with China and Russia and everyone else amassing so much gold, it actually makes a ton of sense to just, we already have 200,000 Bitcoin, like do what they're saying, like let's get up to 1 million, have 5%. And then Bitcoin's going to outperform gold by multitudes.
Oh, yeah.
So you're kind of just flipping the bird to China and Russia, be like, you can have your gold. We'll lean into Bitcoin, and then we can buy all your gold back later if we want. It's like a very smart game theory play to make. Will they make it? I don't know, but we're getting to the point where all the stuff is kicking in, and I think it's like more likely than not. And so if that stuff really starts happening, then who knows where the price is going to go.
It's very, I mean, I am sort of famously like, it doesn't matter what the price is in US dollars because I have no intention of ever trading my Bitcoins
that's come on,
for
that's
US
ridiculous.
dollars. Why? Why is it ridiculous?
Trade it in for real estate. How about it? Doesn't have to be for US dollars.
I own a house. I own a house already.
Okay, but you can own more houses, you know, like trade it for harder assets. Like the hardest asset you can have is land and property.
Well, I hesitate to get so conspiratorial on the internet. But you know what you need to be buying, Andrew? And I'd be surprised if you're not already hip to this. You need to be buying water. You need to be buying wells. You need to be buying land with aquifers on it. I mean, it's not even.
Where do you think I live, my man?
This is not even a conspiracy theory. Nestle and some of these other large corporations not in America, but in other countries are actively buying as much land as possible with water, with renewable. I guess it wouldn't be called renewable, with fresh water sources on it. And in some of these third world countries, it's like the only way that you can access water is like by like getting permission or paying these companies to access the water. It's like, I actually have like legitimately looked into it. That would be a trade that I would consider making. It would be trading some Bitcoin for land with water, with like renewable water on it. That is, yeah. I mean, nothing is gonna make people think I'm a tinfoil hat person more than that. But I do legitimately believe it.
Well, okay, a couple thoughts. One, I do live on a well, so no problem for me. But two, that definitely is happening. However, I think we're going to make enough advances in energy over the next, say, 20 to 50 years where we'll be able to convert salt water into drinkable water. So that to me seems like a problem that's almost certainly is going to be solved in the not too distant future. But yeah, it is an issue. I had heard, I don't remember if I looked into this if it's true or not, but like China was buying water from the Great Lakes and shipping it back to China and shit like that. Like, yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff if you start going down the water rabbit hole.
I would encourage you not to do that. I would encourage you, if you're just a normal person who clicked on this because you know me and you know Wiggins, you wanted to hear some DFS talk, I would encourage you to not pollute your brain with that. I mean, it's something that Brian Hooper says all the time. Like, for 99.9% of human history, you had no fucking clue what was happening on the other side of the earth. You had no idea. It didn't poison your brain. You were just focused on what you needed to do to get to the next day. And yeah, sure, you worked your fingers to the bone, but you were probably happier. So I would definitely encourage that. But it is true. You already can. Like, it's already possible to convert salt water to fresh water. It's just very energy intensive.
Yep.
But there will be ways around that. And eventually, Andrew, the world will stop shunning nuclear power. That which sounds like what coming out of my mouth. People are like, oh, I thought Davis was a lib. Why would he like that? There's nothing more lib, actually. There's nothing more environmentalist and nothing more third world first, actually, than nuclear power. Because nuclear power is so cheap compared to every other form of energy. And like, yeah, obviously there are degrees of danger, but it's just clearly the way forward.
Well, there's a lot of things I think the liberals have done, and I'm mostly a centrist. I'd probably lean to the right a little bit, but I think there's a lot of things the liberals have done over the last few years to prove that they're just completely unserious. And I get the Republicans are unserious in their own way. Like, you don't have to go down the whole Trump thing. It's incredibly unserious. But yeah, like nuclear power, you look at Germany and they're refiring up coal plants. It's like, what are we doing here? It's just absolute madness. So there's a lot of examples like that. That might be the primo example. One thing I want to shout out while we're talking about water is check out Drew Dinkmeyer's charity water campaign that he's running. What's he call that thing? I can't believe I'm blanking on the name.
It's just charity coal and water.
Well, that's the name of but he has a name for his campaign.
Oh, the Wellymaker.
Wellymaker, of course. Can't believe I'm forgetting that. I'm getting old. My brain's failing me. Yeah, Wellymaker. Go donate some money to the Wellymaker. I know he's been having trouble getting it out to get back to politics. The whole new algorithm on Twitter is making it difficult for him to get eyes on that this year. So he hasn't been able to get as much exposure and hasn't been able to raise as much money, which is a real bummer. I think he's raised like $750,000 or something over the last 6 years. So eventually it's going to get to $1 million, which is really, really cool.
I just put in my show notes right now, I just put the link to the Wellymaker, so no excuses. You're here on YouTube. You're not getting shadow banned on Twitter. Which, by the way, it's like, I love being online. I'm never ever leaving Twitter. Like, I don't care. Elon could be like the devil himself, which he might be. You know, I'm not leaving, man. I am way too poisoned to ever leave it. But I am also interested in a social media platform that lets me share my links and doesn't send them to jail. So I'm going to post on lib Twitter too, because it allows me to share my links. But I all the posts about leaving Twitter, it's like, brother, you're not leaving. No one, once you're in, man, you're in forever. I don't believe you're leaving. The amount of people who will actually stop checking Twitter is so low, astronomically low.
Well, look, the key is just don't use the For You tab. If you don't
ever.
Yeah, it's obviously terrible. I also have a secondary account for when I'm trying to be a good boy and say, like, I actually am not going to use Twitter. And that account only follows football people. So it's like, I can't make the excuse that I have to be on there for work, because I can just go on that account and has all the accounts I need to follow. So you can do that as well. But yeah, if you just stay off the For You tab, it's fine. It's what it's always been. But yeah, the For You tab is really, really bad.
I mean, it's just good advice for life. I actually don't even have Instagram on my phone. I don't have it on my phone. Like, I have an account I haven't posted in like 2 years or something, because I was wasting too much time on the For You tab. For whatever reason, the For You tab on Twitter is not appealing to me.
I got an app for you along these lines. It's called Brick. Have you heard of it?
I've used similar thing. Off Screen was the one that I used for a while. Is that the concept?
Yeah, but this one actually works. Most of those you can just delete it or turn it off. So It's like, it doesn't really work because you just end up doing that. Brick is a magnet, and you have to have the physical magnet to turn it on or off. So if you have your phone bricked and you're out and about and you don't have the magnet with you, then too bad, you can't get into anything. So I've been using that a lot, actually. And it's particularly funny if you're somewhere, like I actually will even turn off my browser, which has gotten me into trouble a few times. Like I took my daughter to the zoo, and apparently there's no ticket like booth. You just go to a kiosk, and instead of printing out a ticket, it texts you a link, which then you have to open on a browser. So I go up to scan in to get into the zoo, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of weird, but the browser doesn't work on my phone. Like, how can I get in here? You just sound like a complete lunatic. But I did gain entrance to the zoo that day. But yeah, it's been good. Just turn your phone. Like the only thing I have on there is music and camera. Basically, that's all you really need.
I mean, my thing is I'm always doing these underdog drafts. I'm always
Yeah.
doing the battle royales or playoff best ball or whatever. So
Well, you
like,
can leave that up.
I guess I could. I mean, you're gonna hate this. I do them when I'm at the gym. Like I'm literally making, like I was there this morning making playoff best ball picks in between sets. I was like, well, it's like
Yeah.
I gotta use my, it's not good
Got to
for my brain.
multitask.
Yeah. No, I need the dopamine. What's before we get out of here, what's your training like right now? Are you finally, I know for a while you were constructing your home gym and like kicked out of your house. What's the update there?
Yeah, no, we've been done with that for a while. I'm in as far as weightlifting, I'm the strongest I've ever been. My goal is to be the best shape of my life by 40. And it's a chip shot away. So I think I'm 39. I just turned 39 in September. So strength wise, I'm as strong as I've ever been, which has been awesome. I've been working. I probably lift five times a week. I've been trying to focus more on legs, so my legs have been getting a lot stronger. And then I'm working in a lot of functional exercise. Like I've been climbing once a week with my wife, mostly doing bouldering. I've been doing a lot of jujitsu, like 2 or 3 times a week. I'm trying to actually do more of that and less weightlifting. Maybe get up to like 3 or 4 times a week at jujitsu. And then ski season's coming in, so hopefully I'll be skiing, once every week or two. So I feel like doing these things that are good exercises, but you're outside or you're being active and like, not just doing straight lifts is really good. So I'm trying to be as active as I can. I've been drinking way less, which is huge, because it's not just that the drinking's bad for you, but like I went out drinking Saturday night. It was the most I drank in a while. Went to a concert
Ruins
with a big,
ruins your next 48 hours.
yeah. Then usually on Sunday, I'm lifting while I'm watching games, but instead I was just sitting on the couch, and then I was so hungover that I ended up cracking a couple more beers just to feel okay again, like get back to baseline. Then I'm eating like shit all day, just eating all like my kids' crap out of the
Eating
fridge, so I
garbage.
just completely lost another day, which is frustrating. But I think it was I haven't had a day like that in a long time. So I think it was good, just reminder to not do that. But yeah, the key, just try and eat healthy and do something physical every day if you can.
Who's your guru of choice when it comes to online? Are you a Brian Johnson guy? Are you Huberman guy? Who's your guru?
You know what? I kind of got out of all that stuff. I hired a doctor, like an Atia light type character, just a Boulder doctor. Like I've looked, and there's these doctors. They're not cheap, but they're not like Atia expensive. This guy, you can get him for like it's like $500 a month, but that includes most stuff that they
Labs.
do. Yeah, includes labs. You got to pay for if you're getting anything on top of that, but like prescriptions and whatnot. But yeah, so I've tried to just say, okay, I'm just going to trust my doctor. And so that way I don't need to listen to these podcasts, because 1, there's just so much. And then 2, to parse through it. And then 3, to try and apply it to you. Like Atia could say, oh, you should take these supplements, but I don't know, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. You should run blood work and see what you need. Like I needed more magnesium or whatever. So I'm taking magnesium. So I'm trying, and like in general, I've tried to just listen to less podcasts, but particularly with health stuff, and just like get the work done where I'm actually doing healthy things, and then just trust the doctor. So I don't really have a guy. I do like following Brian Johnson, partly just because it's entertaining.
It's very interesting.
I think he's a complete nut job, but I think like 75% of what he's doing is really good, and then he's way off base on some of it, but it's interesting, no doubt.
Jeff Nippard is like, I would say if someone is like never lifted weights before and they get to the end of this and they're like, I want to be like Wiggins, I want to be big and strong and ship DFS tournaments, I'd be like, Jeff Nippard is really good. I mean, Huberman is very interesting, but like he's so deep into the weeds now. He's doing episodes about like all kinds of shit that is not related to lifting weights. And to be honest, I it's so funny, you know, because Andrew, I never played high school sports. I never played college sports. I was never a meathead. I didn't lift a weight in my life until my 20s, and I never, like, I bet I couldn't bench press my body weight until I was 28 or 29. And now I'm like a meathead, dude. Like
Love it.
it's the highlight of my week is to just like put crazy weight on the bar and move it around. And so the super nerdy or super in depth, like I find it intellectually interesting. But now I'm kind of more like you. It's like I lift weights every day, other than Sunday. I basically take Sunday off. Sunday is my fat ass day. Like I eat bad, I don't move. I get like 3,000 total steps in a day. My dogs look at me. My dogs will look at me when I'm on the couch on Sunday, and like I can just see that they hate me. They're like, you're pathetic, dude. Like you're gross. Like we do not approve of this behavior. But yeah, you got to move. You got to move every day. Honestly, like just walk. I walk every day. I actually have a bet right now with one of the guys in Pete's Discord. Any day you don't take 12,000 steps, $10. That's it. That's all it's you don't get 12,000 steps, you pay $10 to the other guy.
Betting is really, really useful for getting in shape. When I first started lifting weights, I was doing bets with other gamblers to keep me honest. Like, I don't remember exactly how it worked, but it'd be like me and you have done them too, where like you got to do, you know, you can say like, you got to lift, 5 days a week for 2 months straight or whatever, like you come up with it. And
what it's helpful for is the habit building, because that's the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing, especially as an adult, when you're setting your ways, is to change your habits. Like if you've done the same thing for 5 years, 10 years, it's very hard to change that habit. I've found that the weight loss bets don't work great for me because I will cut, and I'll lose 20 pounds. I'll lose 15 pounds. And like, I'll look great. I'll feel great. But then when it's over, I'm like, all right, dude, it's time. Let's slam some pizza and some wings, you know? But so anything that's like habit building, I think like, oh, you got to go to the gym 5 days a week. You got like, I'm big on those.
Yeah, if you like walking, have you ever? I'm sure you know of this because of Atia, and I feel like Huberman's in on it too. Rucking, have you ever done it?
I mean, basically, like I don't have a rucksack, but like if I'm
Yeah,
on my
you don't
shit,
need one.
I'll literally just I have free weights in my basement from
Yeah,
COVID, and I just put them in my book bag and I just walk
yeah,
with the dogs.
yeah, yeah. I think it's great. If you get to a certain point of weights, you probably want something more like a backpack built for it. But if you're just doing like 20 pounds or whatever, you don't need it. And it makes walking a much more strenuous exercise. Like if you look at like your heartbeat or whatever, if you're walking around with 30 pounds, like it's a big difference. So, and it's good for your legs. Like I have a rucksack and I was doing it a bunch for a while and I haven't been doing it lately, but I want, that's something that's really easy and it can get you outside. And I'd love to be doing more of it.
Yeah. All right. Let's get you out of here on this. You got to listen after this. You got to listen to one Grateful Dead recording. The listener here, we can perfectly put it in the algorithm, whatever they want. After this, they gotta they gotta honor the great Phil Lesh, who just passed away 2 weeks ago. What are they listening to? What are you sending them to?
Well, you got to go live, right? And I think there are two shows that are kind of considered the Mount Rushmore. I mean, really, if you listen, really anything in the 70s is probably going to be really good. My favorite show is Veneta, which is what is it? August 27th, 72, I think. Let me look this up.
I got my answer. So Veneta was August 27th, 1972. My favorite Dark Star is the Live at the Winterland, November 11th, 1973. I've got it. First thing that comes up when I Google Grateful Dead. Just any Dark Star that's like longer than like 20, 25 minutes is I really love. If you've never, by the way, I'm a late convert to Grateful Dead. Like I'm an adult Grateful Dead convert. I did not grow up on that stuff at all. Once you get there's a period where like, oh, the Grateful Dead, they're so fucking corny. And then once you get past that and you realize how inspired it is truly some of like the greatest music.
Oh,
I
I
love it
mean,
so much.
corny. You could throw a lot of words at it. Corny isn't one of them as a critique, but yeah, I mean, you're talking Dark Star. Dark Star at the Veneta show goes Dark Star into El Paso into Sing Me Back Home. I mean, and the story behind that show is it was at Ken Kesey's farm, which Kesey is like my all-time hero. Freaking love Ken Kesey. Can't recommend his books enough, and just like reading his whole story. He's the guy that was behind the school bus going across the country, Merry Pranksters, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, that whole concept, and he was deep in the acid tests were because of him, and that's where the Grateful Dead was the house band. But yeah, that 72 show was at his farm. They were raising money for his brother's dairy farm company. So love the Kesey connection. But yeah, really with the Dead, like 72 to 74, I think the argument's either that or 77 would be peak Dead. And they're a little bit different flavors, but you really can't go wrong with any of that. And yeah, if you don't listen to the Dead, get your shit together, start listening to the Dead.
Sometimes a great notion has been sitting. It might even be. I don't even know. It might even be on that shelf right behind me. It's.
That's a
I've
great
read.
American novel, my friend. You got to read it.
No, Infinite Jest is the great American novel, bro.
Yeah, I got to read that. That's on my list. I started it. It's like God, the footnotes, but I keep saying like once I'm in really good reading shape, I'm going to tackle it, and I have not gotten myself back into good reading shape in a while. But I know I have Just on my bookshelf as well. I need to get to it.
Yeah, it's great. But I read the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test actually on your recommendation, and I've read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Ken Kesey, great guy. Everyone, I'm gonna let Wiggins go because I actually have to go do the Swolecast here in a little bit. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to this on the podcast feed, please consider liking and subscribing to the video on YouTube. If you listen to this on YouTube, please like the video, and I will be back with Ryan Doubt next week as we talk
another
about
OG
his,
gambler right there.
As we talk about his entrance into literal Mensa is what we're going to be talking about with Ryan. So I will see you guys all then.